What shall we do?
Take a lead.
Sit together.
What shall we do?
What shall we do?
Take a lead.
Sit together.
What shall we do?
What shall we do?
Take a lead.
Sit together.
What shall we do?
China want to say, Kurera no fumo mawoko. China want to say, Kuchenge taru fumo mawoko. Bajabata babore pasina rarambo. Bajabatuka babore pasina rarambo. What shall we do? Sit together.
What shall we do?
What shall we do? Sit together.
What shall we do?
Right, so we will be starting this session shortly. So I take this opportunity to welcome you guys to join this session. So today we are discussing about COVID-19 global impact. So you are welcome to join. Hi Irene, so I can see you. Thank you for joining. So we have the link at the comment, at the description of this video. We have a link there. You can be able to join this conversation. It's very easy to join. So please join. We'd love to have your perspective in this discussion tonight. Yeah, so maybe I'll wait for you guys to join in a few minutes, and then we can continue or we can start this conversation. All right, so join, guys. All right.
What shall we do? Sit together.
Okay, so I can see you. Stop commenting about the t-shirt. Please join the conversation. Yeah, and Abok, you had joined, and then I don't know, you left. So please come back. Yeah, so I want to mention, guys, it's very easy to join this conversation. Please use the link that I've put on the description of this video, and there is another one on the comment box, so you can be able to join this conversation. So Abok, please come back, and Wekesa and maybe Dennis and everyone, please join this conversation tonight. Tonight we're having a global kind of a global check, reality check, in terms of what is happening in COVID-19 and the trends that are coming up. So we would like to have your perspective in this conversation. Yeah, James is saying, hey bro, streaming live from Doha, Qatar. The voice is loud and clear. Wonderful. So, yeah, nice to see you, James. Yeah, so I would really love to hear what you think about the whole aspect of COVID-19 and the global trends, and especially the impact of COVID-19. Yeah, so I don't want to start this conversation. I always want to have guys giving their perspective. So for me, I would want to be neutral in this whole discussion. So please join this discussion. All right, so I'll be waiting for you guys to join.
What shall we do?
What shall we do?
What shall we do?
She know what to say. Cooking when they walk in the night.
Anyway, now, what touch you want now?
She know what to say. Cooking when they are not with a puma.
Anyway, now, what touch you want now?
And she see my now. What touch you want now?
Anyway, now, what touch you want now?
And they will kiss you now. What touch you want now?
Anyway, now, what touch you want now?
Oh, Tony, what shall we do? Sing to love.
What shall we do?
Oh, Tony, what shall we do? Sing to love.
What shall we do?
Yeah, Tony, what shall we do? Sing to love.
What shall we do?
Right. So we can start this conversation. Just to mention, it's very easy to join this conversation using the link. Please join. I think Abok had joined and then he left, so please come back. So I'd like to start this conversation tonight. And since Conrad is here, we can be able to start as we wait for you all to join. How are you, Conrad? 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 All right. Thank you. Conrad. All right. Okay. There's some noise, Conrad, but I hope it's fine now. So we can start this conversation, Conrad. Maybe first of all, you can do a quick introduction, and then we'll go to this discussion. Conrad? All right. Seems Conrad has some network issues, so I'll just maybe try to sort that in a minute, and then we can start this conversation.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So maybe Conrad, you can do a quick introduction, and then we start this conversation. All right. So seems Conrad has some issue with the network. So before you guys join, I would like to start this session. So please join as we continue. So tonight, like I just mentioned, we are just looking at the global impact of COVID-19 and actually the trends of what's happening all over the world. So maybe the first thing that we'll be looking at to address is the issue of making church or listing churches to be essential services at this crisis, especially what has been done in the USA. Yeah, so I didn't want to give my perspective because mine looks to be extreme at this particular time. So I want someone to help us get a perspective in this. Conrad, is your network okay now?
Yes, I think it is okay.
Thank you, Conrad. So maybe Conrad, we can start with especially what's happening in terms of what happened in the USA. Maybe the president listed churches to be essential services. What does that mean, and how does it change the landscape of actually preventing the spread of COVID-19 in the USA or even the world?
I think you could just repeat the question.
All right.
I didn't get you properly.
Okay, no problem. I'll repeat it again. I'm saying we saw there's, of course, you saw the news just during the day that Trump actually listed churches to be essential services in this crisis moment. So that what that means is that churches can actually operate normally or in Sundays, as long as they can maybe observe social distancing. But in terms of how maybe we prevent the spread of COVID-19, how does that change even the whole narrative in the world? Conrad?
Okay. So yes, this we discuss about COVID issue, and there has been a lot of development in that regard concerning COVID issues. So I think about that. At least I can't pretend to advise them. They know better than we do about this issue. Each one knows what is good for their people and the political dynamics of their side, especially right now in some countries like USA where the general election. But I think it was, I think, last week, and these things have been said for quite some time. We were told, like, if we go for a lockdown, the easiest way out of a lockdown is probably getting out if we have a vaccine or a cure. And
Continue,
from the
Conrad.
research and the ongoing papers that have been published, the likelihood of us having a vaccine soon, or it being here, is diminished as days go by. So the only issue we have right now is how do we live with this virus? That is the only issue we have right now. I think it was a week ago or something. The WHO said, like, be prepared. This virus is turning from a pandemic to an endemic, meaning that the virus will be here to stay for a long time, and we won't have a backup system that will help us out. So I think open country is just one of the ways they are trying. I think if you look at the politics of the USA, especially Democrats, Republicans, the Republicans are mostly pro opening the economy, while the Democrats want the economy not to be open, but I don't know how they continue that and sustain local. I think it's one of the ways of trying to gauge if they open, what happen, and he's trying probably to
Okay,
also
Conrad.
make
I'm
medicine.
sorry, Conrad. I'm sorry, I'll cut you off. It's because of the voice. I think maybe the viewers cannot hear. Can you maybe try to leave and then come back, because I think it's breaking, and even from a confirmation, someone cannot be able to hear clearly. All right.
Okay, let me try again.
Yeah, try to leave and then come back. So yeah, so James is giving a perspective. He's saying the COVID-19 things has really affected everyone majorly negatively. The closure of schools leading to increased rate of theft due to idleness. It has also actually taught people the importance of savings and the whole thing of preparedness. But these figures of positive cases announced, I doubt. Let the worship resume in all parts of the world, because with God, we'll be able to win this war. Wekesa, I'm bringing you to this conversation, and James Shadi Mandale is bringing a perspective that with God, we can be able actually to defeat this COVID-19. And he's saying for him, he cannot trust these positive numbers that we have been seeing, which is actually rising everywhere in the world. Wekesa?
Yes.
Your perspective. Good to see you.
Okay. Yeah, I think we are still at the crossroad, and we are still trying to see what works. But the issue is people have stayed at home, and it's like there's no much interventions that are happening. And if we lock down, and we're not doing anything else, chances are that we will only be straining our livelihood, and there's more stress when people are just idling at home.
Yeah.
So religion also plays a role in terms of our hope and faith. And so there are those who have no problem practicing their faith in their closet, and it's not like we locked God out of this equation. You know, the way some people put it, it looks like we removed God and we tried science. Now that we have tried science, is defeated, we are going back to God. That's not the issue. The measures affected religious sector, affected education sector, affected economy. So it affected the whole society. So it's not only the churches that want to go back. Everybody wants to go back. Students want to go back to their studies. There are people who, like Shikuku was here, is waiting to get married. So there are people whose programs was halted because of this COVID-19. There are businesses that are not doing very well. Even some of us who are still working, we have quite a number of our customers who are not existing. You call one line of shops, you find all of them are closed, or they are passive. They are not very active the way they used to be. You go to bus stations and you see that the bus stage that used to lead to Nairobi and every urban area in this country is connected to Nairobi. So most of those buses are not now working. So it's really hurting the economy. So the question is, when we are staying home, are we improving? If there is no improvement, so what are we doing? Okay, what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for a solution, or we are just scared about what is going on? So that's at the crossroad where we are. And if this disease is still pursuing us in our homes, then the issue is we need to have measures to be taken, but livelihood must continue. Because at the end of the day, I have seen even the restlessness that was in Isili. People have been locked down, and happens, people are in the houses, they don't have what to eat, they don't have any source of livelihood, so they try to look for panya routes to storm to the market so that they can enhance their own livelihood. So we need to partially open the economy and other services that are essential to our lives, and improve our situation. And more important, now that we don't have medication, we need to practice this. Maybe we hold it for these 2-3 months so that we can create a habit of wearing mask, create a habit of not greeting people, create a habit of not squeezing and standing in our motor vehicles, create a habit of washing our hands. Now that we have learned this habit, can we implement it, but be at work or be at other places that we are required to be? And because what I've also seen is that when you walk around the estates, and this even my address goes to students, I'm not sure whether there is a remedy, because I think even students are more disciplined when they are at school, because at school they are under regulations of the school. But at home, most of them are unruly. I have seen most of them loitering on the roads. When you go near to estates, you find the students, they are playing, they are mixing all over, and most of them don't have masks, they don't have anything. So there is not much difference for them being at home and being at school. They will still mix. Maybe when they are at school, what we know is we now need to restrict the number of movements of people who come from outside to those schools. And I know also it affects because the moment students go back to school, when we talk about even jam in Nairobi, it happens because of students. And we can now see it, if they have to release students to go back to school, then automatically they need to remove what we call curfew,
Okay.
because it will affect the movement, and most of the time we will have a lot of traffic jam.
Interesting. Thank you, Professor, for that perspective. It's really important that you are giving that. So I want to bring Conrad. Conrad, I hope your network is now sorted. Can you try? Can you unmute your mic, Conrad?
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope it's
Yes, I
good.
hope so. I hope it is so.
All right. So, Conrad, maybe in regards to what Wekesa is saying, did we miss the first time we were maybe closing schools? Now, there's also, I think in 2007, I'm not sure, there was another disease like this one, but it wasn't as serious as this one, I think. But that time we never closed schools. So did we miss that opportunity?
I'm going out and I will come back. Let me.
Conrad, are you there? Conrad?
Yes.
There was swine that time, yeah? So what's so different from swine flu and this one?
I think I hope I'm clear now. I think we can't compare. We have not had such a virus before in the recent history. I think the other virus that is comparable to corona should be the Spanish flu, which was around 1918. Since then, we have not had a virus of comparable, which has have a devastating effect like COVID, I think. So when it comes to that, the decision whether to open or close school, I think it was being done everywhere. So we could not. We just ran into the bandwagon and started doing that because it was being done everywhere. And I think it's part of the reason that reduced the spread of the virus, probably because you look at the uniqueness of our situation. You find like we have a setup, a multi-generation setup where, especially in the rural areas, where you find a grandmother, grandfather, the young children, they mingle a lot. So, and one of the things you are trying to do, because if you look at the coronavirus, even we talk about opening or closing school, there are only two strategies that countries are employing. The first strategy is suppression of the virus. Suppression of the virus, this is where they close, they lockdowns, and the rest. Those are just suppression. You suppress the virus so that it does not spread. That is what most countries started with, but it has become unsustainable. You cannot continue locking down people forever because it cannot be sustained. Then the next one is mitigation. Mitigation, that is where you protect the vulnerable groups, that is the old people and the people with pre-existing medical conditions. Those are at greater risk of contracting COVID than any other group, and they can easily succumb to it if they contract it. So that is the only two strategy they use. So in the case of Kenya, we are caught between a rock and a hard place because on suppression, we know what will happen. On mitigation, it can't really work here because of the family setups you have. Like you have multi-generational setup, and that's why you see probably the limited movements of people from to or from Nairobi, because Nairobi generally is populated with predominantly younger people who don't have a greater risk. Even if they contract COVID, most of them they'll just be asymptomatic, so they'll have mild or moderate symptoms. But when it comes to rural area, now the counties, that's where you find the old people. So they try just to do some kind of mitigation there. Then there was some point where the president talked about anybody above 55 or something like that, and with pre-existing medical conditions will work from home. So that was some form of mitigation. But one of the things that I think it was necessary we gauge, because then we didn't know much about the virus. It was necessary we gauge because we know and research had already shown that children though not affected so much with the virus in terms of the severity of their condition once they contract the virus, they are partly responsible for spreading the virus to other vulnerable groups. And when you come to the multi-generation setup we have in our country, probably they could spread it to the most vulnerable. So I think it was necessary then to close schools because we are dealing with we didn't have a lot of knowledge then. But now, in terms of opening and the rest of the things, I think we still have is a catch 50-50. But from what we see, things are not the way we thought they could be. When I was looking at this virus, at first we thought the worst could be. Right now, it could be probably at our worst possible situation, but things have been very good. So I think I tried to answer that question about why schools probably they were closed then.
All right, interesting. Thank you very much, Conrad, for that. It helps. Mise is asking the link. Mise, I've actually shared the link with you. I just put it in your reply. So I want to bring a perspective from James. James is saying, locking of people with no food, no work, bearing in mind most of our people live in the hand-to-mouth lifestyle. Let the government look at this issue perfectly. Let life resume to normal, and we'll be able to survive with this whole thing of coronavirus. With the extension of this lockdown in everything, surely most students will not go back to school. Let Kenya be like Ghana. Life has to continue, but all measures has to be put, has to be observed. The use of masks, and he says crowded areas should be avoided and shaking hands. So thank you very much, Mise, for joining this conversation tonight. Maybe I'll immediately not wait you to rest. Maybe you can do a quick introduction, and then you can actually give your perspective because James Mandare is saying the government need to open the economy. Everyone need to go back to normal life.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick, for bringing this show, and thank you for the rest of the panelists for the views they have given. I just joined shortly. I was trying to wrap my head around their approach, but all in all, what I want to say is that what the government is doing the right thing. The government cannot reopen the economy if it's unsure. We all think, when all this started, it started like a joke, and we all thought it's something that was going to be there for a few days. Now we are a few months down the line. So the government, the work, first of all, we must understand the role of the government or the work of the government. Number one responsibility of the government is to protect its citizens. In fact, according to the Constitution, we are the property of the state. And as such, anybody who has property knows that you have to take care of your property. And so the reactionary measure that the government has taken is to protect its property. And so that being said, the problem I think right now we are having that we might be asking the government to do is not to ask the government to reopen the economy just blindly. Perhaps we need to ask the government the fact that we are the property of the state, which means the government has to look after our health. And I think food malnutrition is an hazard to our health. So I think if the government is not taking care of us in terms of food, in terms of health, and in terms of the physical harm, and so on, then we are not safe as we are not meeting its intended purpose of enforcing the curfews and so on. So, particularly, the government, other governments elsewhere globally have responded. If you look at maybe like I'm going to talk about Canada. If you look at Canada, for instance, Canada has responded by introducing something called Canada Emergency Response, Canada Emergency Resource Benefit. And they have also introduced other benefits like families, like they give the package. They have introduced if you lost a job, that you fall. There's also in place. And when you talk about disaster emergency and response, there is also, before any disaster, they knew that people need something called like employment insurance, so that anytime you are out of employment, you have been contributing to that kind of insurance. And so a time like this, it becomes very handy. Perhaps this is a learning curve for countries like Kenya. The same way we contribute to NHI mandatory, the same way we contribute to pension, which is mandatory, the same way we contribute to the taxes is deducted before even we get our paycheck. I think this is a time where Kenya and other governments across the world should reflect and introduce such a benefit, because it's for the benefit of the people in the event of a disaster. Losing a job to a family is a disaster, and even to yourself, even if you're single, because already you have subscribed to a certain lifestyle, and to undo the lifestyle or to go against or to get an interruption of that lifestyle does not really put you in a very comfortable position. So now let me address Kenya as a country.
Yeah.
What the reaction of imposing curfews to Kenya actually is very important, because if you are used to a certain lifestyle, like I've said, a certain income, beer kidogo in the evening, after baada ya kazi, it means, and if tomorrow hakuna ile beer, then you are in problem. Then it means if you are left unregulated at night, that you will be tempted to vandalize somewhere or someone, or that essential worker who is still getting the benefit, the salary. So you will, because his salary or his income is not interrupted. So then we'll be vandalizing their properties, or we could be doing ile kupiga ngeta watu. So it is very important the government realizes that we need to regulate people, put them in the right place, in a place that we can control them. So the first reactionary measure to put the curfew, I think I recommend it, and the government should continue doing that. But the manner in which they are handling the curfew is what is questionable. The force they are using to handle the curfew is what is lethal and is questionable. But the curfew in itself, the intent of the curfew is pure and safe for every Kenyan. And even so, it's worthy to note that change, nobody embraces change. Even if you people are used to eat bananas, and then you come all of a sudden and tell them now you have to start eating pineapples. Even if it's food, at the end of the day, they are going to resist. We resist change all the time. So the curfew is good. So what the government of Kenya perhaps should start doing is start thinking about, I've heard the importance and the benefits of Nyumba Kumi. So then we should introduce through the county governments, like we used to have before, the provincial government, or under the office of the president. We used to have the administration government, where we had the administration, the PCs and all that trickles down. Now we call them the commissioners. Through them, I think we can introduce a benefit that we can give that can complement ile pesa ya wazee. Kama kwa mfano sasa najua kuna wazee wanapata ile pesa ya uzee. Wanapataje? How do they get the money? The same model we can implement, introduce kama ni ile pesa ya uzee they get every month. Let us give them a compliment, tuongeze kidogo. If they were getting, if you're Ramzen, you're getting like 8,000, for instance, let's give them a 1,000 on top, or a 2,000 on top, because we already have an existing framework ya kuwapatia pesa. Now, the chief, I've heard, if I land to the village today, I will be forced to be quarantined because I will be known that I've landed, and I will be forced to quarantine for the next 14 days. So how did the chief know that I landed? The same approach, let them use that and introduce. The government has money in one way or the other, whether it's borrowing a time like this to meet the immediate need of the citizens, like food, the basic needs like food, the shelter, which shelter is not a problem to worry. It's food right now and their health. I think the government can borrow and channel that money. If we have borrowed to invest in infrastructure, why not borrow to invest into the well-being or the health of our wananchi? That's what I would submit as of now.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Thank you, Mr. for that. I just want to go to Conrad quickly, and then I go to Wekesa, Alphonse, and then Abok, and then come back to Mr. Maybe that way. But Conrad, you have a different perspective when it comes to the first thing the government, okay, I don't want to say this, but I just want to say, are we looking at a situation whereby come June next month, this whole lockdown is going to go away and the curfews, and we go back to life, to our normal life? Conrad? Conrad?
I think I didn't get the question properly, but I think you are talking about the curfew. And what I was saying, like the curfew per se, it does not make sense. Like I was one of the people when it was introduced, I was really against it because it just made social distancing to become a problem. Because I've been caught up, by the way, with the curfew thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I went somewhere to do some business. Then I was caught up in the evening, and there's only like 2 or 3 matatus remaining to go back home, and there are so many of us. So you had to make a choice: either enter that matatu, flout all the social distancing thing, but you reach home early before the curfew time, or stay or sleep wherever you are then. So I think that is the problem which has got so many Kenyans. I've been traveling here, going to Kisumu from my home area in Busia, going back. And one of the things that is not, especially during the peak hours, and I know this is the situation countrywide, something like a social distancing at the time of the peak hours towards around 6 or 5 something. Social distancing is something that is not being observed in these matatus. They will observe them in the morning, but in the evening they won't observe because people are trying to beat the curfew. So I think the first thing that the government will do away with that, today we saw the president changing the tone, and I'm very sure that the first thing the government will do away is the curfew, probably, or extend it. Because before the curfew came in, remember they had closed the pubs and the rest of the things. We had some kind of natural curfew. By 11 p.m., I think the towns and Nairobi, whatever, and I used to see people posting pictures of Nairobi. The town was silent, was dead silence, because they closed the club, they closed other places that people could frequent that time of the night. So I think it came about because of that. People were flouting, some of them were remaining in the pub. But I think curfew in preventing coronavirus spread, I don't think it is doing much. In fact, it's working against the very tenets of social distancing. So I think one of the things that the government should start with is the curfew. Either extend the time to something that around 11 p.m. or something, do away with it.
Right, interesting. Thank you very much, Conrad. I want to say, if you're watching us, you can actually tell us your perspective, or maybe you can comment how is the situation where you are. You can tell us, is the curfew working where you are? Have you been caught out in this situation? Or maybe should it stay, or we should actually go to our normal life like it's being done in the USA. All right, so I'll come to you, Wekesa. But anyway, the point is, everyone feels like this lockdown has been there for a long time, isn't it, Wekesa? We did not expect this. It started like a mere joke. Now, this seems to be, it might extend up to November or something to do with September or October or November. So, how do we survive such a long period in quarantine and working from home?
Yeah, it's not that the lockdown has been there for long. It's also not that the curfew is wrong, but when the situation is when the Kenyans are struggling. You remember those days we used to write composition and you say that at seconds became minutes and minutes became hours and hours
Yes.
become weeks and weeks became months. So it's hard to wait patiently on a hungry stomach. That's where the problem is. I don't think the government is doing the wrong thing. It's only that the truth is we don't have a medical solution to the COVID-19, and so it's not going to go there in the near future. Maybe it will stay for a longer period. So what we need to do is how do we allow the economy to run as we manage the situation. I think one of the things also even Kenyans should not celebrate is that there's no way situation can go back to normal for now. Even if you opened the whole curfew and you remove the lockdown, the truth is we still have the enemy within, which is still affecting us. I see people are excited that churches are going to open. It's okay, we will go and worship, but it's not a guarantee that now things are going to be normal. As long as we have not got a remedy to the pandemic, then we still have to exercise a lot of caution. For me, curfew, I don't blame the government. Kenyans, I think one of the most challenging species on earth are Kenyans. And most of the things that happen at night, especially even this motor vehicle industry, daytime they behave well, but when it reaches 6, 7, they change the rule. Those who are carrying 8 they want now to maximize that time to make more money. So you find people are full, and so it needs to still be regulated. They still need to open up the economy, but regulations cannot be dropped just like that. Are we assuming that now we have contained the virus? No. So we need only to adjust so that the economy can run. But in terms of measures, we need even to make them more strict in terms of washing our hands, ensuring we have masks, because these are the only remedies we have. We don't have a medical remedy in terms of drugs or vaccine. So it's the habits that we need to enhance and make them effective. Even if it will reach a point they open the churches, it should not be business as usual. They need to space them such that the way we had a sitting of the Senate, but in an abnormal way. They did not sit all of them inside. They had to spread them. So we may open up the places of worship, but have we learned this culture such that we can operate even without the police following us? We can keep that distance in our churches, keep that distance in our estates, keep that distance in our supermarkets, keep that distance in our bus terminus, because this is where the problem is.
Okay.
So Kenyans should not celebrate. Nothing has changed, and in fact, the numbers are growing exponentially, and it's worrying. If we take this example, that our we wish our bishop a quick recovery, Margaret Wanjiru. But if she only had 15 people in her compound and 8 of them were diagnosed positive,
Yeah.
so that means the more crowds we have, the more challenges we have, and we just need to exercise precaution.
Thank you, Wekesa. Tino, she's saying it's a human issue, not just a Kenyan issue. Yes, we agree this is a human issue, and this pandemic has threatened the existence of humankind. And actually, it's a global issue. But now the issue is, even in our country, in Kenya, maybe in terms of how we manage the livelihood for Kenyans is the biggest question. Alphonse, I want you to address this. Of course, we are saying we want maybe the testing to be done prudently when we are. Again, we have the question of these people at home, they have nothing, or even the government is not managing. People cannot afford to live under that situation. So, what's your perspective? The economy to be open, people to go with their normal life, and then we serve these other measures, or what is your take?
I've learned over time that human beings like doing the wrong things and still want to insist to be given freedom to do the wrong things. And most of the time, majority always are on the wrong, most of the time. In this one, the problem we have, in my view, is to be very sincere, it's very small. But our behavior has made the problem very big. So it's a behavioral issue. So it's either behavior will sink us or behavior will lift us out of the situation.
Yeah.
And it is individual behavior that translates later into collective behavior that translates into public health or public sickness in this matter. You talked about several things. I don't know what the value has been. I had Miss talk about, for example, curfew. Curfew has not solved any problem. Yeah, it has not solved any problem. In fact, it has added more problems. More people have been bundled into a smaller car by police and higher spread. Yeah, during the curfew hours. During curfew hours, more burglaries have been done. Remember these recent stories in Nakuru, where people are asking, it is just less than 150 meters away from a roadblock where police are, and they are being vandalized. Their shops are being vandalized. They are being stolen, and it's the type of theft that requires a lot of energy, sound to be produced, and such. Where a whole wall is broken down, a whole shop is entered into, and people carry things that you can't carry on your back, so you have to have a vehicle, yeah, and such things, and they have happened rampantly. So I think let's agree that our behavior will sink us or our behavior will save us in this one. Whether public health issues like this are never things of health, in my view. They are never things of agents of the republic that enforces the law to enforce the law, but they are usually issues of knowledge. Now, what I will pick from this pandemic is the fact that it has really shared the cracks of globalization. Now, globalization has indicated that majority of the countries are not independent. They don't have things that they produce on their own. They hide in the name of importation, but whatever they're importing or whatever they're exporting, they either cannot consume or actually don't need. So even if they are left with it, they don't know what to do with it. Yeah. So it's not of help to their society. So that inward look where they need now to go down and say we must address our problems from within, so that without is either to share our surplus or that which we can completely never or not able to do at that point in time, that is we ask for to be brought in. Otherwise, we need to have a lot of self-reliance. So it's a behavior issue that now, as we enter into the next phase, will require policy intervention, will require people to understand that their participation in understanding their own needs need to be clear so that their needs are addressed. by their own government, by their own state. I don't know if I've responded to a question, or there's an aspect of it that you feel I've not given address to. I thought I joined late, but I thought I should give my opening remarks in that manner.
All right, thank you for that. I want to go to Abok, but before even Abok, you can unmute your mic. Eric is following from German. Eric is an epidemiologist. So Erika, it's really nice to see you. Yeah, so thank you. And also Jackie, she's following from London. Nice to see you guys. Maybe now we can go to Abok. Abok, maybe I want to get your perspective. Is Trump right and we are wrong? Abok? All right. So Abok, are you there? All right. So let me go to Mise. Mise, maybe now can you respond in terms of what Trump has done and how does that affect the global response in this COVID-19?
I will restrain from talking about Trump, but I would rather respond to things that my other panelists have mentioned. Trump approach is radical, and I don't know. I don't want to. I just don't like the guy, and I will be biased in my view. So let me restrain myself to the policy, like Alphonse mentioned of policy. So when you're talking about curfew, I'm sure the curfew is somewhere within a certain policy, within administration or management. It's one of the measures that should be taken. Where I live, there is a lockdown. I can tell you that I for the last 11 weeks, I can tell you that in every week, I only go out 1 or 2 or 3 times when I drop my wife to work, and I work from home. I go church from home, you know. So that's why I'm telling you, the whole thing of curfew is good for you, especially Kenya. It's very good, and if you are in the position of the government, it is the first reaction. We all know that evil thrives in.
Mr. Sorry for interjection. Can you explain to our viewers and ourselves here to understand what was the objective of the curfew? Has it been met by the government? When the government was putting curfew in place, what were they wanting to achieve? And as we speak, has that been achieved?
It's a reactionary measure. We are not proactive. That's the problem. And if we were proactive, the curfew should have been the last thing to enforce. So, and you're right, it has partially been met, and it has not been met fully. Because I mentioned in my earlier remarks that the intention of the curfew could be good. The manner in which it has been executed is wrong. It's not been executed as supposed to be. Like you mentioned, you're bundled in a police vehicle who purport to enforce or to practice or to protect you as a property of the state, yet they are subjecting you to the very same thing that they are saying they are protecting you from. So it has not been handled well. On a scale of 1 to 10, they have tried around 4%. They have tried. They need to improve the remainder of 6%. Now, poverty is the best incentive to creativity. We all know that when people are confronted with a situation like this, we have to start looking at the police. When you look at the police, what is the ratio of police to the common mwananchi? So police cannot be in every corner to be able to monitor what every mwananchi is doing. what is the ratio of the essential worker to the common mwananchi who is supposed to serve? Obviously, the ratio is not sufficient enough to address the issue. And we all know that, let's talk about the churches. Right now, it's worthy to know that Kenya has the best internet than even Canada, and even the US. Why? Because over 50 years ago, a country like Canada laid their cables underground. And so over a period of time, they have built infrastructure on top of that kind of a network. Now, Kenya is during the Kibaki government, they had fiber optic that was running all over the country, undersea cables that were run that goes everywhere within the country. So now, what am I trying to say? The Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Information Technology, the Ministry of Education should be the ones leading in providing online services. Now, the children, our children, like my kids here, they go to school from home, right? Is that hard? The Ministry of Education should request for a budget to try. Let's say, for example, Alphonse, I know you have a computer. If you don't have a computer, you have a smartphone. So for you, I wouldn't be worried of your kids, because if I wanted, as a teacher, if I wanted to roll out an online, an e-learning platform, you will access it. So the government should work with service providers like Safaricom, like those who are providing data and so on, and say, let us have a joint program where we make sure that all the children, the teachers continue to teach, because you need one teacher. And I've said this in the past. When I was in class 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, we used to have a radio program. Mwalimu alikuwa anakuja anafunza, kama ni Kiswahili, tunaenda tunakaa tunasikiza. Why not now? And it was very effective.
So, Lisa, I want to interject there.
Let me wind up. So the other thing, so the Ministry of Information and Technology should be leading. So we should be identifying those laptops that the government of Jubilee told us for the kids. One kid laptop actually is funded. And so we should be revisiting this and trying to request if we can roll out to especially the interior part of the country, so that you can get the solar, the generators, and so on, so that we can have centers where people can social distance and try to learn. And lastly, freedom does not necessarily mean that you have freedom. You can be having freedom, but you are a slave within your own freedom. So even if Kenya has done well during the day, you are free to go and do your own business from morning to around 7. Why do you want to work at night?
Thank you. Sure, thank you for that. I want maybe, because you are mentioning about budgets and the government releasing money to Minister of Education. Today, the president had a speech and he had a stimulus package. On this budget, he says he will release 6.5 billion to the Ministry of Education. So that means 10,000 teachers to be hired, 1,000 ICT interns. And also, so that means actually the government is actually trying to address what Mise you have said in today's stimulus package. Now, I want maybe now Conrad to give a perspective to this. What that means. Conrad, are you there?
You can take me backstage if you have someone who's coming in.
All right, no problem. When someone is coming, I'll take you back. No problem. Conrad, are you there?
Yes. Right. Could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, so in regards with what Mise was talking about, the government to put funds to try to do maybe online learning. So the government released 6.5 billion in terms of education, which means 10,000 teachers to be hired, 1,000 ICT interns. What do you make of this development? Conrad. All right, let me go to Shikuku, since Conrad has some network issues. So Shikuku, let me come to you. Maybe you can unmute your mic. The government, of course, today there was a stimulus package that was actually unveiled by the president. And one of the issues the president tried to address in that speech was what Ms. talked about. So in terms of that package, what do you make of it?
Thank you, Bona Patrick, and the panelists. I am very humbled to be here once again today. On what you've asked about the package that the president gave today, first, I think it was a good move by the government to come in by offering such a package so that we are able to meet some of the demands that are there in our nation at the moment. I appreciate what my brothers said about the internet that we have in Kenya, which is very reliable. And if it is reliable, it means that it should be used. And I think the government was just moving in to see that it is implemented so that the citizens are able to utilize the opportunity that is there. And to me, I support the move of the government. And if it is well used, if the package is well used, I believe that the government will be able to reach a good number of people that some have not been reached at the moment. We know very well, and this is the truth of the matter, is that there are people who have not been reached even with the e-learning that has been going on. But with the move of the government, I believe this can start taking shape, and many people will be in a position to get the services as required, and a good move will be established as we go forward. Thank you.
All right, interesting. Thank you very much. I want Monda to address this. Monda, can you maybe now address generally the stimulus package to try to revive this economy as well as this crisis? Monda, can you? Okay.
Yeah, actually, I'm trying to access the details of the stimulus package. 53.7 billion.
Yes. Continue.
Kenyan shillings.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And 5 billion.
Monda is having some network challenges. I don't know. His network is unstable today. All right. So before he can actually sort that, maybe let me go to Alphonse and then I'll go to Mise on this same stimulus package. I don't know if Mise you can, Monda, you okay now? Your network was having.
Okay.
Okay. Proceed.
Okay. Yeah. I noticed that. So I'm sorry. We have gone through a lot in our country, and I'm one of those few people who don't trust this government or trust our government. I'm sorry, I might take a very extreme opinion, but that is the reality. We've been talking about 328 billion Kenyan shillings stuffed in foreign accounts that was meant to be an aid for Kenya. Now here we're just talking about 1/6 of the 3.8 billion that is already lost out there. That is 53 billion. And we're expecting it to do miracles.
Yeah.
When we lost about 50 billion that was meant for the laptop project. Now we are being told that 6.5 billion is going to bring a complete transformation in terms of hiring teachers and ICT interns. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I have a feeling that our political leadership, they're out of touch of the realities on the ground. We have a lot of areas, actually about 60%, I can say, of our country that kids do not even have the basic infrastructure in their schools. And that's also the exact reflection of what they have in their homes. So when we want to try and talk about the education through ICT, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. And I feel like, for example, 6.5 billion might not do much. But as far as the other things like medical is concerned, 5 billion for infrastructure, that's a drop in the ocean, my friend. With this kind of rain, the havoc we have seen, the floods, 5 billion for infrastructure. That one is not going to do anything, especially in a country whereby we buy a wheelbarrow at 100,000, or we build a bridge at 1 billion, or we buy a container at 10 million Kenyan shillings. You know that. So 5 billion for infrastructure, I don't see it making sense. So for me, if I had an opportunity to probably give my opinion to the leadership, I would probably ask the government take time and fight the health crisis that we have. Our kids, yes, they have lost, just like any other kid or other kids in the world. They are losing, even those ones who are learning online, they are not getting the real or the proper education as it's supposed to be. We'll focus on fighting this pandemic until probably September. And then in September, for me, we could have the Form 4s and maybe class 8 go back to school. And then we start from there slowly. And then we could, maybe this pandemic can also force us to review our school calendar or our school year from actually from January, instead of January to December. Then we can look forward to summer. We have a school year start in September, running all through to June, just like what most of the schools, what most people do. The reason being, the school year should start immediately just after the budget appropriations. So it should also run concurrently with the financial year. They can look at that and some other things. At this moment, Kenya should not rush to reopen the economy. It can turn to be quite disastrous.
Thank you.
That's
thank you
my opinion for now. Yeah.
All right, thank you. That's an interesting take on the same. Now, I want you in a nutshell, maybe to tell us, because this package was going to healthcare force, which is supporting maybe doctors, where they were talking about diploma healthcare workers or even certificate healthcare workers, and there's a lot of details in it. But in a nutshell, for Monda is saying, for him, he doesn't feel like this is just very small amount of money, yet we could actually allocate more money. Maybe in a nutshell, in your own assessment, is this going to rescue us from this crisis? Alphonse.
Oh, I wanted to ask because I didn't hear if it was my name mentioned or not. So you specifically want me to talk about point number 4 of hiring additional 5,000 healthcare workers with the diploma or certificate level qualification for 1 year at a rate of 1.7 billion for the expansion of the bed capacity in our public hospitals.
Yes.
So I had not done the mathematics, but that amount, I don't know if I was to make it 1.7 billion. If you were to calculate that against 5,000 people, then within 12 months, then we can ask ourselves, what is the budget per staff per month. I don't know any one of us who can do that quickly. I've not done it. So Abok, maybe you can do it. You can give us the figure, or Shikuku, you can give us the figure. But I tend to think that that figure is fairly manipulative, because is that cost for hiring alone? Is it going to be HR cost alone? Because even the hiring process has a cost. Is it going to be the salary cost alone? Is it going to be allowances alone? Is it going to take care of the beds as well? Because we're increasing bed capacities. Do we have a different budget for the beds? Yeah. So I think I lack the details in that. But from where I sit,
maybe Alphonse, if I can inform you a little bit, I have done the math.
Yes.
Yeah. So for I did with the 5,000 health workers for 7.5 billion. So that translates to 340,000 per annum.
1.7
that is
billion.
28,000.
Is it 1.7 billion or 3.7 billion?
What I'm seeing here is actually 1.7 billion.
So you have used 1.7 billion?
Yes,
okay.
1.7.
Okay. So that is
1.7, that is 28,000 per month
28,
for every worker.
Okay.
Yeah, if we just to say that it's just for salary. But you see, we've got a lot of other things.
Yes. No, let's stick to the salary alone, assuming the other things have already been taken care of. 28,000 per month for a healthcare worker. What is the minimum that a healthcare worker should be paid? It is definitely higher than that amount.
Yeah.
Yeah. So already we are creating a situation of what we call indecent jobs. We are already creating what we call conflict at the workplace, because there are people who are underpaid but earning more than this amount. We have people who are qualified and are supposed to be hired but are not being hired, but they're being given something in the name of stimulus. Now, what we have seen, because the healthcare professionals have already given what should be done in the past, this has never been done. The budgets they have been given have never been utilized in hiring. It is just not a long time ago when counties were being told to hire, I think it was around 5,000 or 6,000, healthcare workers. And the counties said they were not given the money. In fact, the process was to deduct some money from the counties so that it comes back to the national government. So I think what we are getting here is what we call political gimmicks. Yeah. And when this pandemic began, and I stated clearly on this show when I was speaking, that there's something referred to as the economics of pandemics. Now here we are at the center of the economics of pandemics, whereby the profiteers of people's problem are now working hard to ensure that they profit from it. They have not funded the relevant authorities, for example, KEMRI, which has run out of their own money that they have been using to do the testing. Now, they have not been given some money. We are being given a budget of 53 billion. When we have heard they have already been given over 300 billion. Now, if you look at these dynamics, it's just the issue of managing the public. Now, the next phase is definitely going to be releasing the virus to the people. Because when they were supposed to stop the virus from coming, they didn't do it. They allowed the Chinese to come and from Italy and Europe to come. And when you go to the first case, I remember the Kenyan who raised the alarm became a security problem instead of becoming a whistleblower, according to the to one Mr. Macharia, who is the CS. So where we are headed into force of destruction, because we are a body that lacks the head. The government, from an executive perspective, does not exist. It is purely working very hard for what we call politics of power instead of politics to save the people in their situations. So next month, it is guaranteed that several things will be released. Several things will be released, and one of them is that the curfew is going not to be there. Yeah, I can guarantee that from what I saw from the language, both body and verbal, from the president. But as that is going to happen, we are also going to be set up for a failure by the same government. so that they say we failed.
All right.
Now, what could have been done at this point? We just needed around 2 billion to pay people to 20,000 each if you turn up to be positive and get quarantine. So that everybody goes for test. Anybody who is turning positive, you will be paid for being quarantined. 20,000, not a lot of money. Just 20,000, and then we spent 30,000 to take care of your quarantine costs.
Okay.
Within that time. Now that will cost us if we had 50,000 people turning positive, and spending 50,000 per person, and that is giving incentive to be tested. That is, which will make most of us get tested. We will have isolated the population that will proceed with the infection from person to person, but we will not spend more than, if it's 50,000 people turning positive, we will have, and 50,000 shillings being spent per person. That should be roughly 2.5 billion, which will go a long way to manage the whole situation without putting so much curfew, without much restriction. And then we spend another 5,000 per month on the old people and the ones who are vulnerable, who can be sick, so that they remain at home. And within 3 months, we will have not just flattened the curve, but we will have managed the entire situation with less cost. What are we doing currently? Yeah, what we are doing currently, we are just raising a level where we will be overwhelmed. Our facilities will be overwhelmed. We will get more support from outside, and it will be support in terms of loan, not grants. In terms of loans that need to be repaid, and those loans will not handle the problem. The loans will go again to the pockets of the 2022 campaigns. Lastly, there is an issue about herd immunity, and I think herd immunity simply means, in my view, in this whole scenario and in the manner in which our politicians are handling it, that let's release the virus to the people. Those who will die, let them die. We, the elite, will not die, but let those who die will die. And then the rest who will not die will have gotten used to the virus, and our life moves on. And I think it's a very dangerous situation for the type of healthcare system we have in this country. And
Thank
the
you.
poor are to be the hardest hit.
Thank you. I think Mosito is saying it's a big joke, and I think Jonah Ondieki is saying it's a pointless to advance conspiracy theories for argument's sake. So I think he's responding to Alphonse, but he can put more clarity specifically.
Just a minute. Let's not even look at it from a point of conspiracy theory, because I think people also use these terms for the sake. Look at it this way. You know, I think it's Monda it's Monda or Mise. Somebody has said, or Shikuku. Somebody has just said that it's in September. I think it was Monda, that we're likely now to go back to normal. The truth is, if the trend remains and we get there soonest, then it is in September that we'll have the highest rate of infection, not when we get to normal. Because the trend is going up. The curve is rising from the left to the right. So it's not a theory. It is statistical information. Then, then we are not testing enough. So the statistical part of it is that there are more people who are positive spreading the virus but not tested yet. Because we have criminalized being positive in terms of corona, nobody is coming out to be tested. So what that simply means is that as we are locked inside, I'm infecting my entire family members and my neighborhood. So when I go to the shop, so if that is not contained, we are entering into a disaster phase of the whole situation. Anyway, proceed.
Thank you for your perspective. I agree with you. We have not hit the peak. Maybe Abo can tell us. That's why I really wanted Eric to be in this conversation. There's another Eric in German who is an epidemiologist. Yeah, but Abok, we have not hit the peak, and Alphonse is correct in some way. It's actually projected maybe September might be the peak, but some other people are saying, of course, that is not the case. What's your perspective?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. And I'm sorry I appeared on the show, then disappeared. I realized I was a bit casual, but I've not changed anyway. So I just have to come back the way I am.
Abok, can you unmute your mic? I'm sorry. Can you unmute your mic? Unmute your mic.
Okay. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick. I don't want to go straight to the question which you have asked, but I want to look at point number 5 and somewhere there, point number 7 of the stimulus program. We are talking about 53.7 billion. I just want to say that nothing new. There is totally nothing new in this particular program, because we have had several of such packages before. I would say that at face value, it is a good program. I only have a problem with implementation bit of it. If you look at, for example, 3 billion for supply of farm inputs through e-vouchers targeting 200,000 small-scale farmers, that is not even approximately, exactly 15,000 will get to a small-scale farmer somewhere. These, if implemented in the right way, then can really make an impact. But the whole thing, just like we know our government, I think the kind of reports that we'll be getting sometimes next year in May or so, when everything is coming down, will be extremely shocking. All these things, to me, do not make sense. If I go to number 7, which we are talking about 850 million to rehabilitate wells, water pans, and underground tanks in arid and semi-arid areas. Which well do you want to rehabilitate right now with the floods? Which water pan are you rehabilitating at this point, even when the national dams are overflowing? We don't even have constant power supply because the water levels are uncontrollable. When you talk about underground tanks in arid and semi-arid areas, I mean, these are just areas. And if you see, look at their location, extremely, I mean, a lot of money allocated to things that do not make sense to us right now. Who in this show or in this panel is complaining about the wells or water pans that are not functioning right now? These are things that should be directed to key areas: healthcare, education, and most importantly, agriculture, because we are looking at how to secure food. I also want to imagine that they want to rehabilitate all these things to make sure that there is water for food security. Then there is 1 billion to control for flood control measures. You want to control flood when it is already flooded, or you control flood when we have a drought, so that when we experience flood, I mean, when rain comes, we don't experience flood. So controlling flood or addressing the effects of the flood, I still don't understand. Then there is 540 million for Greening Kenya campaign. I have no idea what that is, but I want to imagine maybe it is for planting trees or something. Now, right now, you remember sometimes in April or in March, there were statistics that by May, we shall be having like 10,000 positive cases.
Yeah.
We have 1,000. But if you look at the rate at which the reports are being released about daily infections, then as a good statistician, you can just imagine in the next 2 to 3 months what will be happening. By all means, the president's speech indicated that in few days or in few weeks, they might lift the curfew. That means we go back to normal ways of operating. Again, if you look at every other thing, whether we have these measures or not, the kind of environment in which we are operating in may not allow uh, flattening of the curve as such. They concentrated in Isili, they neglected other areas. Now they are running to Kibra. They will go to Kibra and come to Pipeline or go to another place. So I want to agree that number one, there is the politics of or the economics of the pandemic. Then within that, 2022 is not far from today. It is a scheme. It is a scheme. If we can audit what the government has used so far, you will be surprised. But that is not even surprising. Look at the money that we are told is stashed in the offshore account somewhere. The money is meant for the pandemic, but it is stashed somewhere. What makes you believe that even the 53 million will not be stashed somewhere? So our value system, the country or our community ethos, we are really wanting in terms of how we even manage our own resources. So yes, going by the economics, we'll see a lot of cases in the month of August and in the month of September and even going forward.
Thank you, Abok, for your perspective. Jonah, we really need you to be here because disclaimer: there is no medic here. I want to confirm that. Apart from Conrad, who will be coming maybe shortly after Mise and then Wekesa, and then Conrad just say a bit, and then you will come to give your perspective. So Jonah, you can join this conversation tonight. We really need your perspective, and we want to confirm right now there is no medic on the show. All right, apart from Conrad, who is on the backstage. All right. Let me go to Mise. So Mise, from what Abok is saying, we are addressing what we really don't need. Some of the things that the president addressed are not so essential at this particular time. But in your own perspective, what is so important right now? What do Kenyans need right now?
First of all, I've shared a screen that I would like you to project there.
Sure.
Because that screen there, I want Alphonse in particular to know that Kenya is not the only country that is affected. That if you're talking about Kenya is a drop in the ocean when it comes to the cases. If you look here, if you look at the USA, for example, the total cases has been like 1 million plus over here. If you look at the number of deaths, look at here, right? If you look at the new deaths over here, if you look at the cases that have recovered, the active ones, and so on, and each is listed, and I'm sure Kenya is somewhere down there. So if you look at Kenya is actually here. If you can see, Kenya is here. So far, total cases that Kenya has had, according to these numbers, is 1,193. So new cases is plus 31, and deaths and so on. So one thing I wanted to say, let me take off this one here, so that we can come back to what I wanted to say. I would like actually Alphonse to be, I would love Alphonse to be my brother or my father, because he's so generous. We cannot dish money to people as incentives. Actually, he's right, but the timing is wrong. In laws, there are positive laws that are meant to encourage people to come forward or to be participants in any case scenarios. But there are also negative laws. Like now we are seeing the curfews. There are negative laws that they are punitive. If you do this, the law will do this. All right. And so if you positive laws, if you show us this, we will reward you. I think from what I hear, everybody is saying here is that the intent of the government is good. The problem is the execution. The stimulus package is good. But now we don't trust, like Monda Bonchette says, he doesn't trust the government. Neither do I. All right. So if you look at other government, I was actually reading what the IMF was saying in terms of policy, the adjustment of the policy during this time. I have quickly looked at what countries like Afghanistan have done. For example, what Afghanistan have done, they have come up with non-essential spending that is actually curtailed to create space and pandemic-related spending, which is including social relief package for the affected household. And also, they came up with measures to prevent the permanent damage of the Afghan economy. So I'm wondering, that's actually on the IMF website when you look through the response in terms of policy. This is the time that we should look at the intent. Alphonse is right. The fear of every Kenyan right now is that the money that has been set forth to address the issues that have been raised will end up being nested in foreign accounts. So the problem, what we are saying here, is that Kenya has had the best policies. The problem lies after the money has been dispensed, where it goes, only God knows. So even if we are given $1 billion, so we still have the same problem. So I think let us give credit. The intent is good. Let us emphasize and implore our government to try, at least only on this one, to try and put the money where it's intended to be. And last but not least, just few pointers on what Alphonse said and Aboki and Shikoku and Monda Bonchwati. If only we had rolled out the laptops. Today, the implementation of e-learning would have been timely. If we had spent the money for the dams, today the budget of the dams and the wells and so on, today that budget would not be part of this stimulus package that we are being told. So we are actually saying our politicians should be sincere, should try for once. We know 2022 is coming. Those people that you are looking forward to elect you, we are asking you that you spend this money, rightfully so that they can be alive to be there to vote you when it comes 2022. Otherwise, who's going to vote you anyways?
True. Thank you for your perspective, Mr. Now, let me just bring quickly Conrad, because Conrad has some issues in terms of network. He keeps on coming in every time I want to bring him. There's an issue with network. So Conrad, maybe can you enlighten us, because maybe now in terms of the projection and also where we go from here.
And could also Conrad answer my question, because my hometown, the economy closes at 6 p.m. Before 6 p.m. Before even the curfew. So after the enforcement of the curfew, what change does it make for it to continue operating 24 hours?
Sure. Conrad?
Yes, I was trying to answer Miss. I think my network kept going off when I was typing my answer. But I think I've seen this narrative, and we should be alive to the fact that we can't really tell the number of cases we have currently. Part of the WHO, the issue situation reports, part of the things they always talk about and world over is an issue which people are talking about is the true extent of the coronavirus infection. We don't know the true extent. Now, When we started this coronavirus in Kenya, at first we talked about data. We had limited data. There were projections being made concerning the confirmed cases vis-a-vis hospitalization, critical cases, all those things. But 3 months down the line, we have seen, like,
Continue, Conrad. Conrad, continue. All right. So it seems Conrad has another network
most
issue.
of our cases here are automatic. People with, yes, people, I'm saying people with mild, yeah. Let me just
Continue.
start again. I was saying, like, here in Kenya, currently, what we have is that most of our cases are people, asymptomatic people, just from the midst of data, people with mild symptoms and moderate probably, and very, very, very few are in critical condition.
Okay.
So when we started this whole thing, the issue was about, when you're talking even about flattening the curve, the issue was about trying to reduce the strain in our hospital. Up to now, in Africa, in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Uganda, in Ghana, in Nigeria, we have not seen that strain.
Okay.
And recently, the WHO is trying to hypothesize why is that the case. People have been trying to wonder why is that the case. And we have issue probably we came early in this matter. We instituted measures very early. We instituted social distancing. We closed schools very early. So probably our projection is not growing at the same rate like the same way European countries have been growing. The same thing, I think the WHO will share just an article shortly. They were talking about the demographic. That is something that people are talking about, the demographic of the people being affected. In Africa, we are predominantly we are a young continent, made predominantly of young people. And we know, like, the virus does not really affect young people the same way it affects old people. So we have that issue. So when it comes to projection basically the figures, me, I'm not even 10,000. We can't confirm unless we test. We can't confirm that 10,000 unless we test. So the projection, I think the problem, the disconnect between the projection, what I have the issue with them is the kind of projection they are making on hospitalization cases. When I talk hospitalization cases, I'm talking here people with severe COVID, people who need hospitalization, not these people we are admitting in hospital to isolate. So there's a difference here in Kenya. Most of our cases, we are admitting them to hospital to isolate, not to be treated. They are simply isolating them. In Europe and other countries, such people are being isolated in their houses. So that is the major difference we have here. But if we were just admitted, if we had the socioeconomic could allow, and we admit people, only people with severe COVID or a bit moderate to severe COVID, the number of cases probably could be around, people hospitalized could be around 200 or something like that. But you are not seeing that increase in numbers. So I think when it comes to projection, we are looking at these projections and asking ourselves, what in the same as Europe? Across Africa, it's not even a Kenyan situation only. Tanzania, our neighbor here, have not done much on, not instead that such draconian measures we have instead them, but you are not seeing no evidence, leave alone the propaganda we see on social media. There's no evidence that they are seeing an increased number of hospitalization of people in need of hospital care. We are not seeing them in Tanzania. So I think on matters of cases, and one of the things when we started the virus, one of the unknown was how will it affect Africa, keeping in mind our comorbidities like HIV and the rest. But so far we are not seeing anything to purport will have the same curve as the same situation like Europe. So, and I was trying to answer, Miss asked me to answer him about the situation about the curfew. And you see, the Kenya Medical, I think it is the Kenya Medical Association came up with a letter, it drafted a letter 2 weeks ago. It was talking about evidence-based. Most of our things we are doing here in Kenya are not evidence-based, especially the curfew, especially this lockdown or the rest of the things we are instituting. In Nairobi, I allow it. But when you talk about the curfew could work if we had evidence, if we had data to suggest that a certain area has a certain number of cases, and therefore their continued interaction at such and such times could cause an increase in number of cases. So the same narrative is talking about. I can ask him, what about an area with nobody who has entered that area for the last 2 months? Nobody has come in, nobody has gone out. Why should they have a curfew? There's no evidence. There's COVID there. They have not traveled. They have not gone anywhere. They are just Kenyans, but they have not gone anywhere. So I think there's no evidence. What we lack is evidence. If there's evidence, like I'm staying here in the village. In our village, for example, where I stay, the same way as your village, we used to close like at around 8. Everything is done. Everybody has gone home. We don't need a curfew. Naturally, by 8, we'll be home with no need of a curfew. But I'm talking about situation places like Nairobi, Mombasa, where we know the kind of economy these people operate. Do they really require a curfew, or they require an extension of time? So I think on terms of projection, and that is the reason why probably Uhuru was talking in a very certain way today, on terms of projection where we are going in Africa, and generally enough, let me talk generally in Africa, from the data we have currently, you can compare this data, probably compare it with Europe, and probably if we had an epidemiologist, he could shed us more light concerning this.
Thank you.
In Africa, what we are seeing at trajectory, and unless if you want to continue with the same situation, because there are 2 options. Either we open up, deal with the repercussions of opening up, or we continue with this and deal with the economic repercussion. Remember, it's not just people, it's not just some people who are living hand to mouth. Our government also live hand to mouth. Without the economy working, the government will actually not be able to pay its staff. They're also living hand to mouth. They need the economy to be functional. So the hand to mouth is not only about it's also about the government. So I think we need, just to finish, I think we need to think of a way forward, given the data we have, not the data we are hypothesizing about, the data we have here currently. What is the data showing us? Can we research more about that data, and can we use that data we have currently to ensure that even if we decide to open, we'll open in a safe way? But if we continue this trajectory, the cases won't reduce. The cases will continue rising up to September, up to October, up to November, up to December. But shall we shut? And lastly, before I go, my network is disturbing. Lastly, before I go, as I said, people have said earlier,
Conrad, I think you have your network is still having some issue. Are you there? All right. So Conrad has some issue. We can proceed now. I want to come to Shikuku and then Wekesa, and then we go forward. But Shikuku, where do we go from here? I mean, we have talked, we have said, we have really explored every options, but it seems like we are still in a quagmire. So where do we move from here? Like, what is the prudent thing to do? Shikuku, can you unmute your mic? Unmute your mic. Unmute your mic, Shikuku, from your side.
Unmute him.
I cannot be able to unmute him. Can you?
Oh, yes.
Right. You can talk now.
Thank you, Patrick. You've asked me about what is the prudent thing that we can do at this particular time.
Yes.
From the discussion that members have given, it is very true that we are in a quagmire state, and the fact is that if we rush to open the economy to start running, there are a lot of repercussions that will come. And I don't know how much the government is prepared to deal with the repercussions that may come thereafter. And again, if the government keep on with the bans that are still in place, you will still find that a lot is still going to be lost in terms of the economy and for the growth of our nation. And therefore, in my personal opinion, I believe that the best thing that could be done is that even as the government is planning on how to curb the situation and also to help in the economy, not going down that much, the steps should be taken in bits, not just not just taking it immediately. I believe the best thing is to have the steps taken in bits as we look at the situations, and again dealing with major areas that are affected at this time, so that people are helped in terms of controlling the spread of the disease. But if that one is not done, then I believe our nation may suffer a lot. And when members were talking about we did not meet the projection that was 10,000, it was as a result of tests that were being done. You realize that we were still not in a position to do much tests that could bring that number in place. But that number could be there with us. It is only that the testing has not been done to that capacity. So I believe that the best thing is just to have steps being taken in bits in order to see which sectors are so essential to us that needs much participation, and which ones are not that essential that can wait, because I believe life is much important than any other thing. If we are all healthy as citizens of the nation, we are able to build a very healthy nation.
Okay, thank you very much for that perspective. So I want you guys to address where we go from here, and then we'll go to the parting shot for tonight. So Wekesa, where do we go from here?
Before we go somewhere, let me add one or two things in what the panelists have said. Mine will be, although someone was angry about the conspiracy theories we might be giving here, but we are allowed to think. If the government doesn't give us enough information, we can think for ourselves what is going on. And I can say across the globe, what could be going on right now is I want to say the Wuhan psychology. The Wuhan psychology, these guys, they tried, their numbers were going up. They reached a time and they stopped even giving us the statistics. They started managing the numbers. And that is what is even happening in Tanzania. When the numbers were rising and people were raising eyebrows, they stopped even testing. And now they are telling us that they are flattening the curve and they can now open the market. And most governments, that is what they are doing. Since they find that they are helpless, they are not willing to invest in test kits that are going to give them stress. That if they measure and say that right now Kenyans, we have 800 who are suffering from COVID, it will be even of much more psychological impact. That's why they are trying just a few pockets to manage our psychology. Because if we look at the statistics, what is going on, if we maintain that, then we can say, because we have only measured 56,000, around 56,000, and US has done over 5 million. So sometimes when we are comparing Kenya and US, we have to also know how much population they have done in terms of screening. So for theirs, it comes 5 million out of 300 million, it's around 1%. For us, we are 0.11% in terms of our statistics. So if we continue with that trend, it means if up to now we have 56,000, if we continue with that trend, this is 3 months. It means it will take us 29 years to measure for 40 million Kenyans. So something must be done radically, if at all. So I don't think the government's intention is to screen all Kenyans and know exactly who are suffering. Because based on that, on the percentage, then it may tell you that around 800,000 are already infected if we use the statistics, if we do the whole population. So those are scary numbers that the government doesn't want to hear. So what they are doing is because they have seen the impact to the population, they are looking at the number of deaths and they are saying, probably let's continue doing a small screening as we look for alternative way, rather than just do massive screening and scare people, and because they can't handle them in terms of bed capacity, in terms of quarantine, they cannot handle the masses when they open up. And that's why they are not willing to invest in that area. They are trying to manage it. So that's why I'm saying this is just Wuhan psychology of telling us that the numbers are flattening.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your perspective. Monda, where do we go from here? And then let me bring Alphonse now.
Thank you for this chance. Now, before I give my way forward opinion, there's something that I don't know, most Kenyans have not captured it. We had a case in Homa Bay whereby we had this KPA official who was buried at night. And then what the government did, they took the family for quarantine and the family tested negative. And the family members have been all the time voicing their concern that we don't believe that our kin died of COVID-19. But according to the government records, he died of COVID-19. Then we had another case in Bomet, whereby, can you hear me?
Yeah, continue.
Okay, whereby their kin was buried at night. The family was taken to quarantine. They never tested positive. So, that one is telling, it tells us a lot that, okay, yes, we have 1,000 plus numbers that have tested positive.
Yeah.
Can we trust these numbers? Can we trust our testing kits? Can we trust what we are doing? Are they true numbers? Or we have about 50 deaths. Can we really trust these deaths? Because if the government wanted to end doubts and all that, I think that's a case that could have been explained out. But it has been ignored. They don't want to explain to anybody. The family members are there. They have gone to the village and nobody explains how it happened that even the wife of that Bomet guy who died did not have the virus. Now, let me get back to what we are doing as a country. I think silently the government is accepting, or it's moving towards the reality of herd immunity. Okay. But the way they are doing it, they are ensuring that as much as the virus might be led to spread, it's going to spread in a controlled way, not like the way Tanzania has done it. So in such a way that having contained Nairobi and probably the population in Nairobi, if you go to Nairobi, things are just happening normally. Nothing, it's people are about their business. So ideally, what I'm seeing is probably they're going to contain Nairobi for a little while, or the way they have been doing it, it's just on purpose to ensure that the virus, if it's going to spread, it spreads in Nairobi, and then they attain herd immunity in Nairobi. They're going to attain herd immunity in Mombasa, and then it's going to move slowly to the rest of the country. That is the reality we're going to live with. I'm not seeing a situation whereby we're going to have Kenyans tested, we're going to take the COVID-19 positive cases from the population and then we start flattening the curve. China has not been able to do it. I believe so. They're cheating on their numbers. Italy has not been able to do it. America has not been, no country has been able to isolate the COVID-19 cases so far from the population. So what we have to look forward to, it's a controlled, now we have to add that one, a controlled herd immunity, as opposed to just letting the virus spread the way Tanzania is doing. I don't agree with Tanzania just because of the way they have done it.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Monda, for your way forward. I want Alphonse, tell us where we go from here. Alphonse?
Yes. I'm hearing you. I think it's just the delay of my machine. I was asked or tasked to do something which I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it effectively within a short time.
Please do it.
But let me try. What I wanted is to share. My brother, Mr. wanted me to make a response, and that, so I'll just give a quick one. Let me see if I can share the screen. Okay. Application.
Could not be me, but it will be very beneficial for the purposes of this discussion.
Yeah.
I give you a compliment for being
I
there.
understand. You asked me the question, so I'm just trying to respond. For not that it's you as a person, but you as a person is raising the voice of others that are represented by that idea. So I don't know if this is very visible. I really wanted it to be very visible.
I can see it.
Can you guys see it?
Yeah, me, I can see from my side.
Okay. Now, I just wanted to say that if you are to look at the issue of statistics, and that's why testing is important. The first thing I want to say is that Kenya National Bureau of Statistics gave some data, though conservatively given. They usually give data every month. So for the month of April, they said that around 340 billion was lost in the economy due to the lockdown, due to the cessation, curfew, and all that has come with COVID-19 as our measures. So the total impact for Kenya for the month of April is 340 billion. Now, that month is the month we were expecting things to go and grow exponential. And of course, this month of May is extremely higher than that month by more than double in terms of exponentiality of the cases, both tested and even from what we can feel. So based on that alone, so I was looking at a situation, and this is an economic solution, however layman it might appear, that if you are going to lose 340 billion in 1 month, yet if you gave an incentive of 2.5 billion, people will run to come and say, oh, it is not a punishment. If I get this, I'll still be given 20,000 to take care of my family or take care of whatever I would have taken care of, which is making me not to go get tested and get quarantined. Then by so doing, the government will have spent 2.5 billion, and in the process safeguarded the loss of, if not the 340 billion, then a major chunk of the 340 billion. Now, for that to be achieved, then testing becomes very core in the process. That's why I came with the issue of when you provide incentives, you encourage more than if you provide administrative actions like curfew. Now, curfew is only meant for emergency cases during times of war and other such situations when likely security is challenged, national security is challenged. So the curfew, in fact, it was challenged in court because the process of following it or having it established was not followed as per the law. So that's why I felt that our government is not serious, and there's more than catches the eye when you come to that. Now, this global sample I've given there, I've given an example of the first country there I've given is South Africa, which has recorded total cases of 20,125. So that is more than our cases times 15. Yet, you look at that, they have tested 543,000. Now, 543,000 is a sample size that can guide science to make reasonable conclusions. If you look at the population that is a sample size that can guide the population. There is the scientific method to come up with actionable points that will help us go forward. But if you look at 57,000 in our population, it's actually 1% of what South Africa has done. Yet we have similar population. Yeah, our population range is the same, but we have done 1% test of what they have done. So for us to make scientific sense, we need to do 99% more of what we have already done. So what that tells you is that our sample size is too small to make any scientific significance. So the scientists who are making decisions, as one of the panelists, and I think that was Conrad, was saying, scientists are having it rough to make arguments or give direction from the actual data that makes sense. So there's no significance in our data so far. And rate of infection from in terms of cases versus total tests, South Africa has 3.7% or 3.71%, whereas Kenyan percentage is 2.01. So that means in the curve, we are at the very starting of the curve when that percentage is low, because it must rise. So I just want to go quickly now on this one because I've explained my logic. Brazil, in that data, though they have 340 total cases, 340,837, so 340,000 cases, and they have done 735,000 tests. That gives them a rate of 46%. That means for every 100 people they test, 46 are testing positive. And if you look at their behavior before starting to test, it was not very far from the sluggish behavior we have seen in our neighborhood and partly also in our own country. But now the US, that has over 1.6 million cases from the data you shared with us, they have done that out of 14 million tests, and that gives them 11%. Now, you also look at their curve now, they are going down. They are no longer rising. In general, they are going, that means they have surpassed the peak. So they are now stabilizing and getting down. So the speed of testing will make us have the speed of flattening the curve and getting back to normal. So that's why the scientific reasoning is that the faster you test, the better. So whatever makes us get to test faster, that will also help us get a solution faster. You can remove that on the screen now, Patrick, so that I can conclude.
All right, thank you.
Yes. So being generous, I also had a comment about Alphonse being generous when I talked about the amount of money. Now, there is, from 1919, there is global standards of wages and payment of workers. So anytime you pay below those standards, you are underpaying people. So we must understand the underlying facts why you are underpaying. So we cannot say, for example, a country like Kenya, which we have so many teachers today on the board, the BOM teachers, who are going without salary, and you are giving us another money to hire another group of people in the same fraternity. That is being insensitive. And that type of government is a government that is not hands-on. It's a government that is not supporting people. It has a different agenda from being pro-people. So it's on that ground that I think this economic stimulus plan, because it's actually a plan, it is a plan meant to disguise how the loot is going to be taken, and it's a plan meant to defer the pain that people will have mentally on these actions that are being taken today. And as Abok said, let's wait for the next audit, which will happen after 2 years. We get the report. The earliest it can come is in 2022, but this will come in 2023. I can almost guarantee you, if we had Auditor General who is not in the office anyway, so it will take longer.
All right, thank you very much.
Sorry, Alphonse, before you go, you know, when you talk about the incentives, and we know how people can be mischievous. If I know that I'm going to get 50,000, and my friend Mise probably looks like COVID-19 positive, I'm going to try hard and get that virus, my friend, to get 50,000 or 20,000. Because, you know, there is that kind of reasoning again of the public, you know. If there is some easy money coming from somewhere, then they have to use all means to get it. So again, how can that one be managed?
Now, I get you. So the first thing we needed is the there's things we call, in management, there are things we call controls. Yeah, and part of the controls is what we call maker-checker controls. Now, the controls do not eliminate mischievous nature of human beings. It doesn't. When we put controls, it does not make it zero the nature of human beings to steal and to practice some misconduct. But what needs to be clear is that the clarity of the results need to be in the hands of the medical practitioners, that not only will they lose their medical practice licenses, but they also, because the Public Health Act is usually very extensive in such situations, they are likely to be criminally liable, because it's a criminal offense, criminally liable for such results when they come out. So that when you're going to be tested, somebody else is going to pick the result, to come do the test. Somebody else will do the actual testing. Somebody else, and these people need to be in different centers. Now is where Patrick's profession comes on board of telemedicine, is that how we transfer this information need to be in a way that there's minimum human interaction. You don't know who will be handling the next part of the process. So if that is done, we minimize, we will not eliminate, but for sure, it will go a long way in giving us a fair representation of people. Because if you don't test, you can't act. If you test, you have a better point of action. Even if you have chances of people being mischievous, the question will be, what percentage of mischief of the population are we likely to get from the sample? It's most likely going to be less than 5%, which is still a better situation than not having incentive to bring people on board to test and you get the result. Instead, you make it a criminal to be positive. So people, even if they get to be positive, you put them in a quarantine center, they skip, they run away from their country, their county in Nairobi, and you find them in Bomet or in Nakuru or elsewhere in Busia or such.
Thank you, Alphonse. I assume that should be your parting shot too.
Mr. is really feeling like he should put the point. So, if possible, allow him to do so.
Yeah, I'm just mesmerized by the tactic Patrick has successfully employed by scaring us with the numbers. So I think I like the intent is good. The intent is good, absolutely is good. But like my brother Monda said, when Trump said chloroquine will will heal COVID-19, will heal the virus, we had people going already drinking chloroquine, and he was just probably making a joke. So like my brother said, again, poverty is the best incentive to creativity. Desperate measures, desperate times calls for whatever, how it's called. So what I'm trying to say, you are right, but that is not a process that we can be able to implement now. Maybe that is a mitigation in the future. But for now, what you're saying, what our worry is, even the money that you're saying, actually, I like the what you said that, like, for example, when I when I submit my request for something, I don't know where it's, I know maybe it's processed in another part of the country, but I don't know who is processing it. I only see the agent number. So I don't know, so I cannot be able to call and try to find who is the agent. So you're right, that being anonymous in the way the requests are processed is important. But also now we are at a point where we have to look at this case. Urgent and important. Urgent but not important. Important but not urgent. And important, urgent. So in that kind of approach. So right now we need these cases to be looked urgently and with utmost importance. So the problem that you're saying, incentives has always been very successful. It's always a good approach. But like he said, Kenya is a country of mystery, and the country of mystery where money is released and then disappears to thin air. So when you're talking about criminal liability, think about it. I'd rather be arrested and taken to jail, right? I don't know if you ever read a book called The Jail Bird, whereby this guy, Prison Monk actually, This guy, every time he was released from prison, he made sure that he has done something and he has been taken back to prison. Why? In prison, there's free accommodation, free food, right? And free entertainment, free medical care. And so there are a lot of people out there who are willing to go to prison if they can be accorded for that opportunity. Because this is my parting shot. Let me wind up and say, like Shikuku said, life is important. I will add, because life is important, we rather borrow now, save the situation, and make sure that we have used the money rightfully and pay in the future when our economy is prosperous. And lastly, we have seen scandals right from the laptop scandals, the NY scandals, the Huduma number scandal. I was expecting Huduma number to become very handy during this time because it was meant for statistics purposes. So let me say that we are in war. Like Patrick, my brother Alphonse says that we are not in war. Sorry, curfews are meant for war. We are in war. If we are not in a war where this virus is made for as a biological weapon, then we are in real war with a virus whose cure or medicine is not known. If you compare U.S. and Kenya, for instance, in the past few months, US has been in winter season where people were indoors. Now it's becoming summer where people will be going out there and there will be much exposure, which means there will be more cases that is expected to go higher than it was before. So let us use our resources rightfully as opposed to directing our resources to unnecessary.
Thank you very much, Misa. That's really wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you
just
for.
two things. One is we don't gauge policy by intention. So we don't. Let's not talk about the good intention. This is a government that has been in power for more than 8 years. We gauge the policy by outcomes. There is no tangible outcome from this government for such crazy policies that they have given us hope in the past. So we should not think they will do any miracle in the next 2 years, starting from this one. So that's one. Two, before we started having more centers for testing, we only had one center in Nairobi, Influenza Center, and all the tests countrywide were being tested from here. So what we were doing can still be done. So it's not about for the future. When you're talking about these systems exist, the controls exist. We can actually have all the tests, collections done at the various points, tests done at another various point, and then results declared elsewhere. And then from there, as we speak, everybody who is being tested is coded. So the code is unique. So it's not like I'm asking for us to start something new. So the coding system exists, anonymous exists, the system in the medical exists. The people criminally liable are not supposed to be the sick people or the patients who are being tested. It's the medical practitioners who are in the practice. And this cannot necessarily become jailbirds or such a thing. So I think if we were to follow the normal code of conduct that they already exist for these medics, there are not many that we cannot say we cannot act. We can act, and it is practical, it is doable. Only that we must have the goodwill, which currently we lack.
Thank you very much, Alphonse, for your parting shot. So I'll want to bring Conrad. Conrad, give you a parting shot. Then we go to Wekesa, and then Abok, and then we go to Shikuku to finish.
I think so far we are around 2 months or so into the COVID pandemic in Kenya, and as it's been done world over, is a trial.
Conrad. All right, Conrad has some network issue. Let's go to Wekesa.
Okay, I've listened to Kenyans, and I hear most of us have a problem with government. We given chance, we can leech whoever is in power. Is contract coming back?
No, just continue. I'll mute him when he starts. We can continue.
Yeah. Okay. Me, what I will say is that I think sometimes we need to balance, to be fair. I want to give the government the benefit of doubt when they have come up with the stimulus package. I listened to our president very well, and I want to believe he has good intentions. He explained how this time they decided to, in terms of cushioning the vulnerables, they decided not to be sending relief food to them because he talked about the agencies that have been used before. And if you do food maybe worthy 2 billion, what we will reach the vulnerable will be around 1 billion, because part of it is lost in the process. The middlemen maybe lose it through our corrupt ways as Kenyans. And so it's not just the government which is corrupt, even us Kenyans ourselves, our contacts are not trustable. And so the government decided that this time they will be wiring the money direct to the vulnerable people. So the first 10 billion, they are doing it direct. And they say there is also that the 30,000, so it makes it 40 billion. I will also want to say that if you look at what is happening, John Kennedy once said that don't think about what government will do, but think about what you can do for your country. When we look in this situation, even me personally, how I am trying to manage with my small budget, some of the things I have to maneuver around for me to survive. Because COVID never told us it's coming. We were caught unaware.
Yeah.
So all you had, if it's loans you have taken, if it's maybe you have had invested your money in some projects, and all of a sudden COVID came and messed up everything. So government also is trying within its own, this thing was not budgeted for, but they have to work out a way in which they can manage the process and still not collapse the economy. If they decide that they will go and be philanthropic enough to every Kenyan, at the end of the day, when the economy collapses, we will still go back to the same government, and we accuse them of mismanaging our own economy. So they are trying to balance so that we go through the process but still come out as a nation strong.
Thank you, Wekesa. Now, Abok. Can you unmute?
I thought you said Shikuku.
Abok, Shikuku. After you, we go to Conrad. We see if the network is sorted. Shikuku will be the last person.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I just want to say that the story of COVID is a mysterious story. It's a mysterious story happening in a mysterious country. And therefore, this is a mystery that we cannot unravel at the moment. We can argue until the year ends, but the government knows what it's doing, whether good or bad. The government exactly understands their intention. I want to steer clear of the statistics of the COVID, whether we have the right numbers for the death, for those who are testing positive, and the best way. Because the moment we don't understand our own government, and the moment we don't understand COVID itself, we will just be discussing something we don't know. And I was present when we were voting in 2013 and in 2017, and even up to now. I can say that this government has not been honest in most of the things they are doing. And therefore, even with this one, we just want to say that your figures are very good on paper, but we don't know what they mean beyond the paper. If I was to be given an opportunity to address food security in agriculture, we know that 30% of formal jobs are in agriculture. And we know that 65% of foreign exchange come from agriculture. But today, just look at the allocations to that. I just want to tell everyone that we have to prepare for the rise in prices of agricultural commodities in the next 2 to 3 and moving forward months, unless something is done urgently. If you look at the estimated number of 200,000 small-scale farmers, we have over 5 million small-scale farmers. So you want to facilitate 200,000 people to feed over 50 million people. That means by the category of when you want to classify a small-scale farmer, this is somebody who is doing between an acre and 5 acres. Look at most of us, we are here in town, we are eating, but we don't know where the food is coming from. At the end of the day, we are experiencing border closures, even from where we would get alternative food. In our own country, flood has ravaged all farms, almost all farms, and therefore will not be in a position even to produce. Even for those who are being facilitated may not even be producing. So I want to leave the story of the government and how it's handling COVID patients and that to them. I just want to assume that with the stimulus package or the package that we are discussing, I want to assume that they are going to be to be somehow honest, because we have seen people disappearing with money meant for the sick in the hospital. We have seen money being squandered or misused, and even during this time. So it's my prayer that the government is going to be at least faithful to this particular program, at least for the first time. At least for the first time. I think the most we can do for this government is just to pray for the leaders, because really, we have seen, and it's very impossible. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. It has been a wonderful discussion. Let's keep on praying for the government. Maybe just one day, 2 years, less than a year, maybe they are going to be touched for this particular reason, not to misuse this 53.7 billion, plus so many others that I know are going to come forth on their way.
All right. Thank you very much, Bok, for that perspective. Let's go to Conrad. Can you try to maybe make it brief? We see if your network is okay now. Conrad?
Yes, I think it's now okay.
Yeah,
So,
just make a brief screenshot.
Yes. Okay. COVID-19 has been with us for the last 2 months, and we have been trying some things. We have made mistake in some things, but now we know what you are dealing with. You are dealing with a health issue. You're also dealing with an economic issue. So between those two, you need to choose one. We need to choose one struggle. On the health side, you're already seeing what is happening. But on the economic front, we know what will happen if we don't get back to work. So as a government, we have looked at both sides. We know, we have seen what other countries have gone through. We have instituted some measures. We have tried everything. But one thing that we know is not sustainable is this form of lockdown or something like that. We can't sustain it. The economic challenges that will face us will be more than the health issue which we are projecting may be caused by COVID-19. And as Abok had said, we have had some challenges. I think Corona came, then we forgot, like we had a locust issue, or we still have it. I don't know. We have flood issue. Food security will become a big challenge. I was reading some articles, I think, from a Uganda newspaper, and they're already talking about food challenge in Uganda because of the lockdown. People are not able.
All right, Conrad, again, your network is having some issues. Now let me go to Shikuku, and then the last shot will be taken by Misa. Shikuku?
Thank you. On my side, first I want to appreciate every member for their contribution that has been very, very, very instrumental in helping us to deal with the situation that we are in. My prayer is that whatever we are discussing here and many, many concerned citizens of Kenya will be useful to the government of Kenya to help in getting a solution. Otherwise, on my side, I know, as members have said, and as I've heard many people talking about the same thing, we have two things that we are dealing with. That is the economy and the health. And as I said before, that if we have healthy citizens, we shall build a healthy nation. But however, we should also remember that not everybody in this nation is in the same page. We have people who are struggling in life. We have people who are doing better off. We have those who are in the middle. So we are never the same. But I believe the government should come up with a solution that is going to cut across to everyone, so that we do not lose people to any other thing like famine as a result of food shortage, when we are in a position to help curb that. So my parting shot is just to say that let's support our government. I know it is good we criticize, and through that criticism we are able to get the best service from them. But again, where we can support them, let's support them. Where they have done well, let's encourage, because it will be of essence for us to do that, so that we get the best service from them. I know it is, I've heard how we've criticized the government. It is true. We have to criticize where there is wrong. It is good to do that. But again, we need to encourage them, so that at the end of the day, we shall have the best of their services. One thing that I know, this is a situation that is with us. We don't know how long it will take. But again, we should not forget that we have an economy to grow, and we also have many citizens to take care of. That is my parting shot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shikuku. Now, Misa will take the last shot on this one. Misa, take us home.
I have shared a screen there, and I just wanted to talk about, I wanted to invite my brother Alphonse to look into that, because right now we are having a scenario that is unprecedented, but even so, there are some cases in the past that we could model or mimic, and for that reason, I wanted to invite Alphonse, because he has been consistent in terms of controls, and I wanted to invite him in terms of policy review and development. So when we talk about policy review, that means there's an existing policy. So which means right now, either the Minister of Health in conjunction with other ministries, they have policies that work in the, either they independently or they depend on one another. So now, if you look at what I've put on the screen here, there's something called issue or problem identification. And then there's policy response, there is implementation, there is monitoring and review. And in terms of review, that's where we evaluate and say, was the issue or was the policy, did it meet the objective? Is it working for us? If it's not working for us, what can we do? What can we change? What is it that we didn't do right? Okay. So for me, I think Kenya has very good policies, but more often they don't do reviews. Every policy is good up to after it's up to around 3 to 5 years. So probably the most recommended is about 3 years, and then there is a review. So has Kenya reviewed their policies right now? What stage are we in terms of what we are going through? So that's what I wanted to bring to Alphonse, because when talking of controls, there is the part of monitoring. Now, this is where we are able to see the controls that are in place. Have they worked? If they never work, what can we do for it to work? And lastly, but not least, there are a lot of Kenyans who are passionate. And I can say without fear of contradiction, we are part of those Kenyans because we have spent our time. I believe in where you are, Patrick, maybe it's night, maybe it's 11, but you are still awake to discuss on issues that relate to our country. So this country, people like us, have not been called upon by the government to give free contribution. When the government is talking about interns, hiring interns, what about volunteers who are there, who are willing? There are people who don't want to be paid, but because of patriotism, they want to give certain solutions. What about invention? What about technology? Have we called those guys who can give online solutions? Kenya is one of the country that is very, very aggressive in terms of technology. Have we called our IT guys, our youth, to come with solutions? And then we can say, we're going to give you incentive, the incentives that you are talking about. If you come with a solution, we're giving you the incentive. That way, we will have teachers who can volunteer. We will have medics, even if they have not been hired by the government, they can volunteer because they are citizens of the country. That way, we can have people from everywhere that can volunteer. And through volunteering, the government can create a database that will say, if you volunteer, your hours are stored, the hours that you volunteer. So the most available opportunities goes to those people who volunteer. You are considered through the volunteer work.
Thank you very much. I don't really want to add anything there. So I want to end this maybe at this hour. So guys, thank you very much for participating. I want to say this coronavirus has been really a big crisis. I really want to confirm we are at war of COVID-19, and I want to thank all the medical professionals who are actually helping us or who are at the forefront fighting this COVID-19. So thank you guys. We really support you, and we really want to do all as much as we can do. And I want to say, guys, we will be having a very big crisis in a couple of months or some months to come over this COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19. So I want to say, everyone, let's do all we can do at this time so that we can avoid going that route. Thank you very much. Good night, guys. All right. Good night. See you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
See you guys.